This week, we reach new depths of the war as Sherman marches deeper into the belly of the secessionist beast, and Grant inches closer and closer to the Confederate capital. Oh, I'm sure the rebels are shaking in their boots. Well, if they have shoes. But we can't count our chickens before they hatch. Eggs being another luxury the Confederate citizens can't afford, for the enemy still exists, and won't let this marching continue without battle. On May 27th, Georgia, General Sherman locked horns with General Johnston and fought to a stalemate. I say stalemate, William charged time and time again just to be repulsed. Johnston hasn't counterattacked or assaulted. This might change, as General Patrick Claiborne has been sent with his division against Federal officer McPherson's HQ. But before Claiborne can start battle, our aggressive Sherman wishes to strike. Johnston may be entrenched, but the military division outnumbers the rebels and can turn the Confederate right flank. This is by Pickett's Mill, and General Howard is ordered towards the mill. Twice the 4th Corps must halt the assault as enemy entrenchments oppose them. The third time, at 1700 hours, they advance once more. We still found a line of works to our right, but they did not seem to cover General Wood's front, and they were new. The enemy still working hard upon them. Howard is wrong. The enemy line belonging to Claiborne covers Wood's front as it does all of the 4th Corps. We will put in Hazen and see what success he has. Woods isn't alone. The other two forces forming the line are struck. General Richard W. Johnston's men from the 14th Corps and General McQueen's brigade from the 23rd Corps. Holding the far left flank, Colonel Benjamin Scribner has to deal with two brigades of Confederate cavalry. Scribner halts and turns to face the rebel riders under Brigadier General John Kelly, but by doing so leaves Hazen alone. On the right of Hazen is McLean. By some mistake of orders, McLean's troops directed to keep the rebel left busy did not show themselves to the enemy, nor open any fire to attract his attention. How does one miss a battle? He might have been a little more rigid under Howard. The two do hate each other. Of all the brigade commanders in Sherman's army, a worse one to assist in Howard's attack could not have been found. Howard blamed the man for his losses at Chancellorsville, and McLean, who was unfairly passed over and praised during the debacle of Second Bull Run, probably holds a grudge. Did he leave Hazen alone to protest against Howard, or to earn his renown by fighting alone? No matter how the excellent general avoided confrontation, this allows rebel officer Govan to take two regiments and strike on Hazen's flank, who was alone with his 1,500 men in a brutal crossfire. The uproar was deafening, the air sibilant. The streams and sheets of missiles, of the hundreds of corpses within 20 paces of the Confederate line, venture to say that a third were within 15 paces, and not one within 10. The men of Hazen are itching to fight, and with a yell advance. Ah, damn you, we have caught you without your logs. Shattered, the Union falls back, but Howard, undaunted, orders forward Colonel Gibson's brigade. The fresh Federalists fare no better under hellish fire, and more rebels reinforce, noticing McLean not advancing. Colonel Scribner can finally break loose from his skirmish, comes to Gibson's aid, but the wily enemy horsemen follow him. General Johnston is wounded, and Gibson falls back, only to be replaced by Colonel Kneffler? German names. By now, Howard has received orders to halt the assault and only hold the enemy at bay, so Kneffler is lucky, and instead of charging, merely exchanges fire till nightfall. Union rescues as many men as possible before falling back. An opportunistic secessionist charges the field and captures the stragglers and wounded of Howard's doomed assault. Under these circumstances, it soon became evident the assault had failed. Many of our men were left behind on the field, riddled with bullets throughout the battle, one fallen son having 47 holes in his corpse. The men of Sherman suffered 1,600 casualties, of which over 500 were either killed or missing. Claiborne lost 85 KIA and 363 WIA, and Kelly lost around 200 more men. The entire day was a testament to the stubbornness of our leaders and the unfortunate consequences of their bullheadedness. After the terrifying 27th, General Jacob Cox does an analysis. He found two considerable contributors to the catastrophe: the battle column usage and the enemy entrenchment's strength. First, the columns. The result in both cases demonstrated that in a difficult and wooded country, and especially against entrenched lines, the column had little, if any, advantage over a single line of equal front. Exposed masses of men to fire who were unable to fire in return. As for the entrenchments, it is within bounds to say that such works were constantly built by the contending forces in Georgia. made one man in the trench fully equal to 3 or 4 in the assault. The rebel camp is jubilant. For 3 days, they have held off a numerically superior opponent, inflicting more losses to Sherman than they have taken. General Johnston wires General Braxton Bragg about his success, with a cautionary note that the Union has been gaining about a mile a day, all towards the essential railroads. However, he also notices that Sherman's left flank might be vulnerable, and sends General Hood to take advantage of this. The famed Texan leader is advancing near a city with a name he is familiar with, Dallas. When John Bell arrives, the Union is behind solid works, and receives orders from General Johnston to fall back. The Union left is strong, so the right must be weak, and Hardee is told to move against Dallas directly. Fighting Billy Bates' division is to lead the march. In truth, the Union right was being sent to the left, but Bates was too quick and caught General McPherson early in the movement. The dismounted cavalry of Brigadier General Frank Armstrong received their marching order
to ascertain by a forced reconnaissance if those entrenchments were still held by adequate forces.
There are more than adequate forces. General Logan holds his corps in a pristine position. Bates waits for Armstrong's signal, but the rebel rider is currently occupied with witnessing the destruction of his force. He has had the unfortunate honor of discovering the 20 rounds per minute Spencer rifle's effectiveness.
Armstrong was received with a cannonade and fire of musketry so spirited that each of the brigade commanders supposed that all the troops but his own were engaged, in order the assault of the works.
Bates tries to stop the assault of his brigades, but only one receives the order. Subsequent charge is the complete reversal of the past 3 days, as the Confederates suffer what Sherman has had to deal with, 1,200 casualties to Logan's 279. There we are, a real stalemate. Sherman wanted to take Marietta, and Johnston unable to push back Sherman. But there is a remaining piece on the board. General Blair and the 17th Corps are at Rome, and get their orders.
March straight for Allatoona, which I infer the enemy has abandoned altogether. I will move to the left, and resume railroad communications to the rear.
This is executed, and he is able to seize the Allatoona Pass on the 1st, and on the 3rd he takes the town of Acworth.
The railroad and telegraph wire are both complete as far as Acworth, except the Etowah Railroad Bridge, and the country in our rear is entirely clear of the enemy.
Again, Johnston is in retreat, but he has let Sherman's blood. Can the Union continue to take such losses? And how long can Johnston fall back? Though the rebels might have a trick up their sleeve, General John Hunt Morgan, the famed rebel rider, has moved into Kentucky, and maybe soon Sherman will have to worry more about his rear than his front. Now for the in-between. Let's look at the political realm. We'll be breaking chronology even more, splitting foreign from domestic. First, foreign. The 29th, Emperor Maximilian of Mexico, the French pretender to the non-existent throne, arrives in Veracruz. Up till now, he has been fighting the war without stepping foot in his empire. He receives no warm reception in the city of Veracruz, suffering from plague. But his presence does put pressure on us, as Europeans may wish to expand their control to not just former Spanish colonies, but maybe British. On the topic of the British, they accepted a transfer from the Confederate Navy, taking in the CSS Georgia. The rebels have been using our former rulers as a naval base. Now, this sale is to a merchant and not the government of Queen Victoria, allowing the United Kingdom to ignore the protest of our ambassador, Charles Francis Adams. Returning to this side of the Atlantic, on the 3rd, Lincoln approved an act establishing the Bureau of Currency, with an office and government bonds further support the national currency. This is very similar to another act of Congress last year. But the actual major domestic decision isn't one of Congress or Lincoln, but of a new party on the scene. The 1860 election saw an explosion of candidates. The Democrats split between the North and South. The center went to the Young Constitutional Union Party, while the anti-slavery populists rallied around the Republicans. As we approached the 1864 election, the Democrats continued their split, some working with the Republicans, forming a new party, the National Union, a union of Republicans and war-minded Jacksonians. But that's for next week. So what is the new party? I'm talking about the Radical Democracy Party. What is the Radical Democracy Party? Is it some copperhead Democrats unsatisfied with their party? Or war Democrats not wishing to ally with Lincoln? Or perhaps radical Republicans wanting someone other than the current commander-in-chief? All of the above! The convention was initially supposed to be for those who wanted someone more radical than Lincoln, but it's attracted Democrats for some reason. The party's abolitionists, supported by Frederick Douglass, proto-feminists with suffragettes attending, and anti-war measures. Again, it's a weird mix. The party existed mostly as a threat for Lincoln, so there isn't much discussion about who their candidate is. John C. Fremont, the Republican nominee in 1856, and a Democrat, John Cochrane. How will Lincoln meet this threat? Does he even care? Instead of answering the demands of the radical Democrats, he uses that time to express support for General Grant, who is being used as a political pawn by the radical Democrats. The New York delegation trying to nominate Ulysses to the presidency, despite the fact Grant has no interest, so I don't understand what is going on entirely.
My previous high estimate of General Grant has been maintained and heightened by what has occurred in the remarkable campaign he is now conducting.
Is this praise well placed? Let's see, for it's time for Virginia. Last week, the Army of the Potomac narrowly escaped the Confederate trap at North Anna. The escape was due to luck. Robert.E.Lee suffered from diarrhea and other ailments. After the escape, Lieutenant General Grant turned over command of the 9th Corps to General Meade and ordered the march towards Cold Harbor. Let us stop and look at the General-in-Chief. Ulysses is very different from his predecessor, Major General Henry Halleck. Far more aggressive and leading from the front. Both positive traits in some cases. While I still hold out hope, I would be doing a disservice not to explain some of Ulysses' drawbacks. He has lost men, lots of men, and only to gain a few miles of territory. His aggressiveness has earned him praise from politicians and some of the ordinary soldiers, but also condemnation from others. Friends and brothers in arms got brief, unbefitting burials, and much trust has been lost. For heaven's sake, he so mismanaged Burnside's corps that to break the rules to ensure it was under the competent command of General Meade. Grant must prove himself, and show why the men should follow him. Meade won at Gettysburg. Grant must win in Virginia. The continuation of Ulysses' favorite move of flank from the left has both armies continue south, crossing the Pamunkey River. The 27th sees Brigadier General Custer and his Wolverines disperse rebel pickets to secure the ford over the Pamunkey, setting the stage for a cavalry battle. On the 28th, hooves hit the earth's path, pushing up plumes of dirt. Rebel officer Wade Hampton rides forward as the eyes and ears of the rebel army, and opposite him for the Union is Commander David Gregg, ready to find and eliminate the pesky Confederates. The daring cavalry commander has left behind the Federal division of General Torbert. Seems since the killing of Stuart, our cavalry has grown confident. The two sides meet at Hawshop, exchanging fire first at Ennon Church. Brigadier Henry Davies, under General Gregg, takes his New Yorkers and establishes a picket line, which is soon pushed back. Hampton then falls back and sets a shallow defensive line, allowing for quick movement of his men, but taunts the Union. Mud and swamps protect their flanks. When the Confederate commander views our men, he realizes he has us outnumbered.
We got the Yankees where we want them now.
Before the secessionists can strike, Colonel Gregg, the cousin of General Gregg, arrives on Davies' flank and sets up his artillery. Hampton's charge is blasted apart with cannon shot and shot to pieces by musketry. But numbers do wonder. The Union line begins to bend until New Jersey reinforcements come in. Our men then charge, and despite the enemy being green, they are equipped with Enfield rifles, which have the range and blast apart the assault. Officer Davies has his saber cut in two, and his horse's tail shot off. When Union troopers get in range, our technology proves itself. The 7-shot Spencer carbine delivers fire at a rate only imagined by losers in their basement. With only 200 men, 18,000 bullets are delivered, and some guns run so hot that fire must be paused to stop melting. The two sides exchange fire. Not even Colonel Gregg's aide can dent Hampton's formation. Therefore, General Gregg asks for reinforcements. While infantry is close, the footmen are considered too wary and tired, so instead cavalry is sent. But the 1st Brigade Drive can't attack, instead holding the line against a rebel flanking maneuver. Then comes in the famed Custer, the young hussar dismounts his men and deploys them like infantry. He then turns his horse as his band plays Yankee Doodle and charges. His men suffer greatly.
Greater than in any other engagement of the campaign.
But his dismounted men are mistaken for infantry, scaring Hampton. He has done his job, surveillance is complete, and he orders the withdrawal. The Union overruns the final opposition. But Hampton's main force is safe behind Totopotomoy Creek. Most of his men fall back handsomely. The southern part of his line is isolated. The Wolverines charge in, killing the commander of an enemy battalion. But the rebels avenge Stuart, killing the private who shot him. Gregg suffered 365 casualties. Hampton, it is harder to determine. Maybe 370, 400, there are conflicting reports. Grant continues his march, hoping to cross the earlier mentioned creek, that I can't pronounce for anything, where Lee waits for him. This leads us to the 30th, where 3 separate engagements take place. We shall now cover them independently of each other from east to west. First in the far east at Old Church. I don't know if it has it in their name, it's just Old Church. This is the cavalry of General Torbert meet with General Butler. Different Butler, which I'm pretty sure has no relation to the other General Butler, but I'm not entirely sure. South Carolinians. First, the forward pickets of Commander Devon are pushed back. 17th Pennsylvania counterattacks and restores the position. The rebels counter the counterattack and take it back. The 17th fight desperately to hold the rebels back from Mattaquin Creek. 2 New York regiments are sent in, but are blunted by 2 South Carolina regiments. Officer Torbert surveys and realizes that he is fighting against a whole enemy brigade, and fully orders in his division. The reserve brigade of General Merritt replaces Devon's men and tries to flank their opponents, but Butler reinforces and blunts the Union's attempt. Finally, General Custer comes in with his Wolverines, flanks the enemy from both sides, pours constant fire in with his 7-shot rifles, and blasts the enemy apart with artillery. Rebels put in their reserves but are swept aside. Butler begins a rout and is chased for 1.5 miles. Once again, the rebel riders forfeit the field, and once again Custer proves the deciding factor. He lost 90 men to the Confederates' 188. Now, for the center, General Warren and his 5th Corps cross the Totopotomoy Creek. They form on Shady Grove Road and begin their probing operation. Lee responds in force, fearing this to be one of Grant's famed flanking formations. He orders the 2nd Corps under General Ewell. Wait, not Ewell? Early? What happened? We thought Ewell was unfit for command. Precisely one event during the Battle of Spotsylvania, where Ewell began beating his soldiers with the back of his sword.
General Ewell, you must restrain yourself. How can you expect to control these men when you have lost control of yourself? If you cannot repress the excitement, you had better retire.
So Robert is now commanding the defense of Richmond, and Lieutenant General Jubal Early, a temporary promotion, is given the 2nd Corps. Early is a good commander, having held the Corps command many times in the past when illness prevented the actual leader from his leadership. He knows what to do when given orders. General Pickett's division, probably led by Officer Pickett? I don't know for sure. Still, George does arrive around this time, holds on Shady Road, as General Rhodes and his division are sent down Old Church Road to flank the Federals and run up their rear. Oh, stop laughing. Warren is no fool and worries about his flanks. He orders Commander Crawford to take his division and hold the left. Thus sent forward the brigade of Colonel Hardrum. This is a terrible choice. One of his regiments is due to expire on this day. Another is already eligible for discharge. To their support are 2 inexperienced regiments. Rhodes is able to rout Hardrum easily. Then the rebel Rhodes loses control of his men, which halts Lee's plan. But Early tries to quickly fix it, with Major General Ramseur sent in with his division to continue the assault. Last for Ramseur, the element of surprise has been lost. The 5th Corps has halted and set up for an engagement from the south. Artillery is unlimbered, and each division is turned to face the 2nd Corps. The 1st Confederate Corps, which is supposed to assist, is nowhere to be seen, waiting for Warren to do his turning safely. Ramseur is new to division command, and it shows. His assault is against Duggan men with artillery. The supporting division of General Gordon is still deploying and can't assist. Neither can Rhodes. Ramseur's personal brigade becomes pinned down, leaving Pegram's brigade under Colonel Willis to assault alone. They advance under a crossfire of rifles and cannons, but as Willis is mortally wounded, the brigade loses heart and falls back.
The slaughter was so sickening that Major Hartshorn leaped to his feet and called upon his assailants to surrender. Some hundreds did so. Rebels or no rebels, their behavior and bearing during the charge had won the admiration of their captors, who did not hesitate to express it. Our lines melted away as if by magic. Every brigade, staff, and field officer was cut down, mostly killed outright, in an incredibly short time.
Warren asks for assistance to continue the assault, and while Meade orders it, the Army of the Potomac is too slow. Ramseur tries to blame Anderson, but his men don't want to hear it. They lost 263 brothers dead, another 961 maimed, and 369 either missing or captured. That's 1,593 total, meaning half of that. 52 missing and 679 killed or wounded, 731 total. And finally, the 2nd Corps under General Hancock begins an advance against the division of General Breckinridge. Initial success is seen as secessionist skirmishers are captured, and their forward rifle pits occupied. The rebels' main line is too strong, so Hancock digs in and waits for reinforcements from the 9th Corps. But Burnside drags his feet and arrives too late in the day for a charge. Well, that's a disappointment. Thus ends the 30th. But the aftermath of the bloody day is even more exciting. The 18th Corps under Major General Smith is being moved into position by Cold Harbor. If this is done, we won't be able to contain the enemy. 31st sees the 2nd Corps try crossing again, but report back the solid Confederate position. Thus Grant finalizes the orders and begins the march to Cold Harbor. General Lee is no fool. Oh, how I wish he was. And has already sent his nephew to General Butler's aid. No, the rebel one, toward the crossroads of Old Cold Harbor. But they soon become engaged with the Federal cavalry of General Torbert. Lee orders the 1st Corps to aid the cavalry, and General Hoke's division from Beauregard moves to help Butler. They are too late. 1600 hours, General Gregg's division comes to Torbert's side and captures the crossroads. They begin to dig in. But the arrival of Hoke scares General Sheridan, the cavalry corps commander, and orders his men to fall back to Old Church. General Grant breaks with his old friend Philip and orders the return of the cavalry. It must be held at all hazards. Luckily, the rebels didn't realize the retreat, and Torbert returned to the crossroads. Cold Harbor was ready for battle, which I will cover next week. I know, but look, the battle continues past the 3rd. I don't like splitting up big contests. Okay. The real reason is that this video is already long, and I need to complete this week's report, but I promise to cover it in whole next week. Then there is Sickles, the mascot of this series. On the 31st, he sends a communication to President Lincoln, worried about the great freedom of local commanders, asking that there be a general order sent out to stop smuggling, and ends his communication with a promise to continue to Little Rock. Thus ends the week, with General Grant and General Sherman marching to their next battle. First, William Tecumseh has thrown his forces repeatedly against enemy entrenchments. He's an aggressive soul, but needs a calmer mind. Same with Grant. Their tenacity earned them both their positions, but a little refinement would be appreciated. And else the cost of this war will be written on a butcher's bill. Hi, it's the entire Civil War week-by-week team here. I would like to ask for your patience for Cold Harbor. I know it's a big battle, I know it's very cool. I promise it will happen next week, which I do hope to see you at. Thank you.